Hello and welcome. If you are starting into chess, but you don't really know where to start with an opening, by uh, either starting with d4 with the queen's pawn or e4 with the king's pawn, I have I have made this video for you to help you choose between these two options. So let's go into it. Starting with the queen's pawn, you get a you get a slower start in the opening, meaning that from the get-go, both sides have less opportunity to attack each other lethally, meaning that a checkmating within 7 or 8 moves are is way harder to achieve when properly played. So therefore, d4 is a rather slower approach and safer approach going into the opening. Moving on from the opening, once both sides developed some pieces, moved some pawns, you are going into the middle game. And characteristic for the d4 opening, the middle game is rather closed, meaning there have been less trades on the board, meaning there are, if any, no pawns traded, no pieces traded, and therefore the position remains closed. And this leads into less checkmating options from the get-go. Going down this road, a closed positions, closed positions in general, enables you and your opponent, both players, to navigate their pieces more because they are less vulnerable to attacks from a longer distance because the board is more closed. And let me this is what you can call a more positional gameplay and style of game, because are both players are fighting for a positional advantage. In if you played any role playing games or RPGs, this is or card games, um, you can call this a more controlly style of play. So if you like this one, this is d4 or the queen's pawn opening is definitely for you. On a fun note, I want to add that by playing the queen's pawn, you give your opponent the ability to play the king's Indian. And the King's Indian is one of, if not the wildest, uh, the wildest uh, opening for both players. White can choose between playing a more classical and slower approach where both sides cast in the same direction and go for a more d4 traditional slow play, and maneuvering, trying to outplay the opponent by placing the pieces on better squares. Or you say, I go full on ham into your face, and you get probably one of the wildest pawn structures, who would be something like this. So this is not uncommon for the in the King's Indian for white. And you And yeah, black has definitely counterplay to it, and that's the wild nature of the King's Indian. looking at this, it sounds ridiculous, but it is very much playable and even fun for both sides. So this is what I would call a perk of the d4 opening. You get such a wild and exotic position out of it. As a summary to the d4 opening or the queen's pawn opening, we can say that if you like a slower, safer approach in the opening, and you don't mind getting closer positions with not none but less tactical elements, d4 is definitely for you. Also, you get to maneuver more your pieces around, if allowed by your opponent, of course. So, moving on, the the e4 opening or the king's pawn. So the e4 opening and or the king's pawn opening is very much characteristic, excuse me, for its sharp and very tactical nature. Out of the opening, the e4 opening or the king's pawn will give you the ability for will not only give you but also your opponent the ability to fight for an advantage by playing very aggressively and very tricky lines where you most of the time have to know uh, the the line to get safe out of it or to get an advantage. So therefore the e4 opening tends to be more chaotic and more sharp in nature right in the opening. Moving on from the opening into the middle game, e4 openings tend to have more trades in nature, and therefore you get more often open middle games where you get the opportunity to attack your opponent, either as black or white. It's always both sides. Not always, but for both sides. Furthermore, both sides have the ability to make sacrificial plays, which means you go in with a piece, maybe you let it get captured for nothing, or you give just a pawn for a piece, um, but in but in exchange you get some form of advantage by either checkmating your opponent or then following up taking something even more valuable. A very good description for the positions coming out of the e4 openings are wild. The e4 positions tend to be very wild in nature by being so widely open and therefore prone to attacks for each side. On a fun note, the e4 opening gives your opponent the ability to play the Sicilian defense, and the Sicilian is a very spicy opening, very strong, but for both players can be very sharp. There are tons of sacrificial opportunity in some lines, tons of variety and play and move orders. A beautiful opening for both sides. Both can have so much fun when played properly. So in a summary, uh, if you like a more so talking in a RPG language, the E4 I would describe as a more aggressive and tempo based style, and tempo a more tempo a more aggressive and tempo based style of opening. So if you like to be tactical sharp and going for checkmating ideas right from the opening, e4 is definitely for you. On a ending note, if you made it this far, I wanted to say that I wanted to I was thinking about to edit some parts of the video. As you saw, I've struggled very much with my language because English is not native to me, and these by trying to be structured and giving having a certain flow of direction on how I wanted to structure the video, I had to be very in a state of mind where I am not used to, and it's very unusual to me to try and be so structured in my speaking and to follow a certain path that I laid before, because I couldn't be just like, oh, I talk about d4, here I talk about e4 and going back to d4. No, um if it has to be, if I want it to be useful for someone starting, I I had to give it some structure, but I also wanted to, yeah, I didn't want it to feel fake or unnatural, and cutting scenes where I had to take a look at my second screen and read some notes because I had, for the first time I'm recording videos, I had to make notes because even though I'm familiar with all these concepts I talked about for now years, by giving them a structure and form, it becomes very different, and trying to make it digestible for other people, it's so much different as if I have it in my head and I understand it for myself, but then bringing it out for other people is it's so interesting. It I I I tried to record yesterday, and I failed horribly. I was so not happy with how I recorded, and I had to cut so much, and it came out so unnatural, and bleh, it was so ugly, and I wasn't happy with it. So I started today again, and I've tried it for some hours now, and now I made it in one go now, and I decided, no, I'm not gonna cut it. I'm gonna let it be natural. If someone dislikes it because of that, then so be it. I tried my best. I gave my best, and I want it to be natural. So, having said that, if you watched to this point, you are a legend. I want to say you thank you very much for watching. I gave my very best, and this is very new for me still, recording videos and making that, but it's super fun and I'm learning every day, and reflecting upon it, it's so bewitching for me. It's incredible. So again, thanks for watching, and I wish you a good time. Bye bye.